A very good evening to all of you who are present here. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to this evening. Today, we are joined by a very special guest and author who has to his credit some very popular books. He is the co-author of the best-selling Ikigai, the Japanese secret to a long and happy life, which has been translated into 57 languages. Now, this is a lot. A learner, an avid reader, a writer. He loves taking pictures. And on his website, I really loved reading it. I quote, he writes, I love traveling, science, physics, astronomy, science fiction, and Japanese culture. I enjoy more creating things than consuming them. I am a dreamer, I unquote. Welcome, Mr. Héctor García, today, this evening.
Hello. Hello, nice to meet you, everyone.
To do the conversation with him, we have another fabulous author today with us, Dr. Vikram Sampath. Dr. Vikram Sampath, as we know, is a Bangalore-based historian. He is the author of 4 acclaimed books, Splendors of Royal Mysore, the Untold Story of the Wodeyars, My Name is Gohar Jan, The Life and Times of a Musician, and The Voice of the Veena S. Balachandran, a biography. His latest book is the first volume of a 2-volume biography, Savarkar, Echoes from a Forgotten Past, from Penguin Random House, India, that has gone on to become a national bestseller. I welcome you, Dr. Sampath, today to do this conversation with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Apra.
Before we begin, I'd like to share something about Prabha Khaitan Foundation. Prabha Khaitan Foundation, Mr. Garcia, is an innovator of various boutique literary events to promote literature, writing, art, and culture. Through these boutique events, the main aim of Prabha Khaitan Foundation is to indulge people in mentally stimulating conversations, provide platforms to authors, artists, performers to showcase their intelligent talent. The exchange of such high magnitude and prolific ideas result in forward-looking creators of our country, India. We have collaborations with many universities across the globe. These events bring renowned authors and artists to interact with individuals. SAS Women is another initiative of Prabha Khaitan Foundation, a group of women who act as the galvanizing agents knitting social economy of local people, thus helping to preserve our languages, art, and culture. Today, through this journey, we will touch upon many aspects of Mr. Héctor Garcia's life. I welcome you again, Mr. Garcia and Dr. Sampath, for an amazing conversation. Over to you, Dr. Vikram Sampath.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Apra. And a warm welcome, Hector, to this conversation. And I can't tell you how delighted and how honored I feel to be speaking to you this evening.
Likewise, it's an honor to meet. It feels like I'm at home with all of you here. Like literature and books is what I love. So
wow.
It's an honor to be talking with a writer, historian writer like you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And like we were discussing just before the session began, this book, Ikigai, spoke to me personally, I think, many, many levels. And like I was telling you, I was finding my Ikigai in my life, at least career-wise. I think in personal life, I'm yet to find my Ikigai, and that's where your book is going to act as my, friend and guide. But professionally, from being in the corporate world and so on, and finally deciding that I'm not going to, postpone my happiness for post-retirement, I decided to throw it all and become a writer. And that's where I found Ikigai, which for those who don't know is finding that purpose in life, keeping yourself occupied mentally, physically with things that stimulate you and make you happy. So when I see your, biodata, it's very similar. You've been a software engineer. I think you continue to work.
Yes. I struggle with that. So I want your advice. So yeah, I've been changing careers many times. So many people have this question: is it is it okay to have many ikigais? And I always say yes, it is. In fact, you can, depending on your stage in life, you can start changing your ikigai, depending if you are in your 20s, if you're in your 40s, maybe you have to focus in your family, and maybe, yeah, you can change them. And for me, yeah, I think you said you were in like engineer. I always liked like solving problems, or that's what I thought. But then I realized as an engineer, for some reason, I think this is also an advice to find your ikigai. You start noticing what you are, maybe you get into something. I want to ask you, for example, why did you start what you started? Maybe I got into engineering because there were some people that I admired, that I wanted to be like Steve Jobs or Bill Gates when I was a kid. So I admired these people and I wanted to be like them. So that's why I became an engineer. But then I realized I didn't like it that much. There were some things that, okay, I struggled. There were many engineers that were much better than me, right? But then I started looking at what I was doing every day, and I noticed that I was pretty good at writing and explaining things, much better than other engineers. So they were good at solving problems, but when managers were asking about what are you doing, all the engineers were lost, and I could explain correctly things. So that was my first realization. Okay, maybe I should write more. And then I started writing in a blog. This blog became like the top, like one of the #1 blogs in Spain. And from there, I wrote my first books, which were not very successful. I think that's maybe, I don't know, but I want to know, and I'm curious about you, Vikram. I want to know, probably your first book was not very popular, or maybe I'm wrong, maybe. And then after a while, and now it's like, wow.
So, yeah, I think it's a journey. Initially it starts off that way, and then one also needs to, so how did you keep your faith in yourself and in the choice you made that you want to write alongside, because circumstances can also throw us off our feet, even if we have found that is the purpose of our life. If success doesn't come to us early and easily, it's going to be difficult to sustain your spirit and go on the path, right? So it needs that resilience.
This is a very good question, and I don't have a good answer. But I think the main thing is to not, if you have a really truly a belief inside you, is to never give up and keep doing it, even if you are not. Many people, maybe you are struggling, like you can only do something. You're having something as a side job, and you want to transition. That's like a common pattern. And maybe you've been 2-3 years and still you're not successful. But you have to keep, like, usually when you see success stories, it's from those people who didn't give up. It's like, usually when you see success, you only see, oh, this guy, I don't know, in music. I think in Hollywood, in India, you have this Bollywood, like, okay, he's a superstar.
Yeah.
And I think you get a bias of, like, oh, this person became famous instantly. Probably there is lots of work behind, of like getting into the industry, learning about like how to be an actor, and maybe doing very stupid movies before, and then wow, and then people forget about the beginning. And for me too, my story with writing is like, I was writing in my blog for probably 10 years before I wrote my first book. And then Ikigai was published.
And what was this blog about? I mean, this was the Geek in Japan, or was it?
Yes, you know a lot about. Yes, it was the Geek in Japan. So it was still very. It was about discovering. It was also my spirit as an engineer. Like I want to understand things. I'm very curious, and I believe from what I know, to be an historian like you also have to be very curious. You want to know more. Okay, why is that? Why is that? And then why is that? And you keep doing that. And that's what I did with Japanese culture. I was here in Tokyo. Like, if some people have been in Japan, like if you come here, like you don't understand anything. Everything is like an alien world. So then I started writing, trying to explain what I was seeing. So I started asking people, Japanese people, like, okay, why is this like this? And then I explain it in the book. So it's a little bit like an anthropology, which Ikigai, the book, is also an anthropology in some parts. It's like we travel to Okinawa, where they live the longest in the world, one of the blue zones. And I talk with the oldest people in Japan, which they are more than 100 years old, and try to put together. So that for me, it's also a transition. I didn't know how to do that. My first books were more like an engineer, like try to write a software specification.
And so, like a good researcher, as you said, I've also done sufficient research on your writing journey and so on. And I also discovered something which probably you've mentioned, I think, in one of your interviews. You don't share too much with people. It's also this moment of epiphany for you, if I may use that word, where I think it was your illness which also brought in that deep sense of the fact.
You're a very good historian. Where did you find that? I don't usually.
Well,
I share it in Zoom calls only.
Historians and journalists don't share their sources, Hector. So I don't think I'll be able to tell you where I found it.
Let's keep it secret then. That's
yes.
Okay. So I'm going to share it with you.
My larger question was, of course, it's a very personal, thing in your life, and please feel free to only share if you're comfortable. But then this whole thing that, does pain and hardship, when we are faced with that upfront suffering, hardships, and pains, it's only then that the human spirit is, pushed or propelled to find the meaning of happiness. If nothing is there and it's a very normal monochromatic life, we are not pushed enough to find our Ikigai, and we just say, okay, let's carry on with the way the day is going.
Yes, that's. I want to believe that suffering that hard is not needed, but certainly it helps. When you see many stories of people, there is something, but it can be nothing as dramatic. But usually when you see many stories of like life-changing, and there is something big in their lives, like something very bad happened. And then you see an artist and things like that. But I want to believe that you can trigger that, for example, by reading books and like being very conscious. You can trigger that without really suffering, like really being very aware that we have only one life. Well, this is something that some people here, we have only one life. Here in India, you believe in many lives, right?
Yes.
So I might be saying something, you have this, or if you had many lives, but we have this one that they gave us, so we have to make the most of it. And suffering certainly helps. And I think this is also in your like Indian Hinduism and Buddhism, there is always this theme of suffering. And I'm an avid reader. And in my 20s, when I was reading books about suffering and Buddhism, I didn't really understand. I was like, in my 20s, I was super healthy. I felt invincible. I started writing on the internet. I was popular on the internet. I published my first book. I felt like, whoa, amazing. But then I felt like I could achieve anything. I was like the first engineer for Twitter in Japan. That's something I felt like, wow, I'm amazing. I'm hanging out in Silicon Valley this is what I wanted in life, like to become like Bill Gates or like Steve Jobs. But then I realized, okay, this is not really happening. There's people much more smarter than me. And then when I hit my 30s, like this very weird illness, it's still difficult for me. Now I think I can share. But a very weird illness started in my intestine, and I basically, it was very difficult to diagnose. But I basically was, like I would say more than 3 years, like I could do nothing. I couldn't write, I couldn't work. I was like totally, like it was really it's still difficult for me to talk about those 3 years because I think I almost deleted from my mind. Like, but it was the first time in my life that I could not, even if I wanted, at the beginning of the illness, I said, okay, I'm going to fix this. When I read my diary, like, I'm going to fix this in 1 month. And I was very naive. There are certain things in life that you cannot fix. That's what I learned. As an engineer, I always wanted, okay, this is how you, and I think this is very human. And depending on your, if you live until you're 100 without any problem in your life, that's beautiful. For example, my grandfather is now 97, and I believe, and he's super happy. He has never had any. He has never been rich or anything. He's lived always, how do you say, agriculture in the countryside in Spain. Nothing very bad happened in his life. Nothing like, he's like very peaceful life. That's also okay. But many people, there is some events in life that is like, you have to, you cannot change them. You have to accept them, right? This is also acceptance. This is also very, you have that in Indian culture. You have to accept those.
Yeah.
So I accepted, okay, this is my illness, whatever. And that's what brought me to start thinking about Ikigai. And that's why I wrote the book Ikigai. And I believe that's why I still don't know why it's so popular in India, but I think I never mentioned my illness in the book, but I think that the message resonates to the readers, and that's why it's so popular. It's a long, but yeah, I want to ask you, what do you think? Can you be like a super? When I read you are also you write biographies, right?
That's right. That's right.
When you analyze the life of someone who has been like an artist or someone who has great success, usually there is lots of internal, right? But do you believe it's necessary, or you can simulate it?
No, I think one goes through the process, and I keep saying, with every biography, a part of the biographer dies somewhere, because I think, you have lived another life. You have gone through the ups and downs of another human being. You have experienced their sorrows, and they become so, you almost feel very protective about them. You've read all their letters, you've read their friends and enemies become your friends and enemies. You try to become very defensive of them. But at the same time, while writing it, you should necessarily not have that emotional connect. Otherwise, a very thin line between a biography and a hagiography that one writes, it's just hero worship. So one shouldn't do that. So yeah, it's I think on similar line. But take us through the journey. After you went to Okinawa, where you kind of. So when did that germinate? I do know that a friend of yours came in and you went on a walk, and that's where you decided.
You know the whole story. That's the origin story. So I met this. This is also like to activate. I also believe, well, I'm starting to believe now that to activate you have to be surrounded by the right people sometimes in life to activate your Ikigai. So even if I was like, okay, I'm writing for many years, I was very alone. I didn't know any, now I'm meeting you, it's like, oh, one writer. I didn't know any writer around me. I was like the typical like lonely writer. And then suddenly this new person appeared in my life. His name is Francesc, and I met him first time 10 years ago. And I've been 16 years in Japan, and Francesc liked to travel to Tokyo and travel around. And so I met him through my blog, and we had dinner. Like, okay, and then he came back to Spain, and then he came back again, and he started telling me about him. He started sending me books. He was like a Spanish novelist with many pen names, so it was very difficult. I was trying to find his books, but then he started sending, and I discovered he's also very humble, but he has written like more than 100 books, novels in Spain. Wow. So it's like, wow. And he's becoming my friend, and then in one of the trips, we went to like a very beautiful garden, and I was explaining him about my illness because at this point he was like my friend. He's also like a psychologist in Spain. So I was sharing with him my suffering basically. And he told me many things, but the thing that happened is that I explained to him the word Ikigai, and I explained to him about the people in Okinawa, like the
Would you want to elaborate what Ikigai is for those who are listening?
Yes, so Ikigai is it's a Japanese word that means, it's very difficult to translate, but it means roughly, it has two parts in Japanese. It's like life and what is worthwhile. So it's a life that is worthwhile living. So even if, so this connects very well. If you believe in like many lives, it's like you have to make every life worth living. And it is, for the Japanese, it is just the word, but I believe that in English, you see, you need to say a full sentence. So you also are a lover of languages, and you know the power of words. Sometimes if you say something in a sentence, like the reason for being or having a life of purpose, you need a full sentence. So this is more difficult to conceptualize. If you just have one word, you compress the meaning. It's like Ikigai. And I believe that that's why it's becoming so popular, because now everyone listening here who didn't know about the word Ikigai, you will probably remember. If you're feeling down like 2 months from now, and you're a little bit depressed, it's like, okay, I'm not connected with my Ikigai. What should I do? I should stop doing these things that are not giving me energy. I should start doing these things that give me energy and connect me more with what I really believe is meaningful. And at the moment, it has become like, I think it has become a philosophy from the book and everything. And I think Indian people are also writing books about Ikigai. And I'm okay. At the beginning, there were many books that were copies, but now I think people are having their own original ideas. So that's amazing. Like there is people writing. If someone wants to write books about Ikigai, go on. It's like we only planted the seed. That's the and everything started in this walk in Tokyo. And my friend Frances is like, oh, this word Ikigai should be known by the rest of the world. And he said, let's write a book together. And that will help you as, he said, writing a book together about Ikigai and the meaning of life will help you as therapy to heal yourself. And that started, it didn't heal me instantly, but it started a road. I still struggle with my stomach. I'm having like hard times, but it's much better than the first 2-3 years. It like started there. Having purpose like helps you, like you can bear anyhow, like even through struggle. If you have lots of purpose, you can be like happy.
So the book talks about, finding that purpose is only one aspect or one, ingredient for what you call, longevity or long life. But I think it's you mention it as a combination of many things, right? A good diet, appropriate exercise, and at the same time, social, bonds, family, friends, the man being a social animal. So how all of that combines together to contribute to your mental well-being and reduction of stress, and thereby contributing to anti-aging and longer life. So I asked this question particularly, in relation to what we are facing today in the world with COVID, where increasingly we are leading isolated lives. We are all shut down and locked down in our houses, much against our wishes. So how does one then look at these aspects of, exercising or even non-social distancing? How do I maintain?
I don't know. You're putting me I'm going to tell you my trick for exercise. You can exercise at home.
Correct.
In fact, in the book we explain, and I think in India you have like, I think yoga has been very like, there is I realized also there is like real Indian yoga and another yoga. You can do yoga at home, right? You can do exercise. And in fact, I do exercise at home. It's like very, yes, that's what I do. So yeah, I prefer. So that's
what is this
one
whole
thing
diet,
about
the diet thing?
about social and diet. So diet, it's also very mysterious. I would say what we discover about the Okinawan diet is that, well, the main thing is like you try to find for something. Oh, okay, they will not, and we find them drinking alcohol. We find they love eating. In fact, this is something that I think you can. Like they eat pork. They love eating like very fatty pork. They eat meat. They eat fish. The main thing is that they eat a variety of many things, and they eat food from the environment. So it's not food that is coming from a factory. It's not processed food. It's like there is some people in the village who are fishing. There is some people who are growing. Not some people. Everyone was growing their own vegetables. So, and people are interchanging like food. And there's one thing I found, like they like turmeric. Like this is a common with India. They love turmeric, and they love doing very like turmeric is a very. I think it's unique in Okinawa. In the rest of Japan, they don't do it. And there's some research in Okinawa that turmeric must be one of the things I added to my diet after, and it's a very Indian thing, but also shared with Okinawa. And the main thing is that they never eat until being full. It's always, there is this saying in Japanese, is hara hachibu. That is like when you're feeling 80% full, you should stop eating. And I don't know about you, but in Spain, it used to, now I'm more Japanese, and but in Spain, it's usually when you are 100%, you ask for dessert and you keep eating. And then you are 120 and you are so full that you want to sleep. And when you get in your 40s, you start developing like
obesity and
yes. So in Japan, I think this is true this is true for whole Japan. It's the only developed country in the world where obesity hasn't grown since the 80s. So that's a very important. The rest of the industrialized countries, obesity is going up. And it's not because you see Japanese people in Tokyo and they are eating McDonald's, they're eating crap food. But the main thing is that the portions, the amount of food that they eat is not as much as we eat. And if you travel to Japan, the first days you feel hungry because you go to restaurants and you feel like, you feel like, okay, I would like to eat a little bit more, but because it's finished, you say, okay. And then once you get used to it, you can practice the same thing at home, like try not to put. And about the social, I'm struggling with this. I want your solution. I'm also like, I'm using Zoom to meet people. So I'm very happy to meet you today, but yeah, it would be better like being together.
Right.
But hopefully it has a little bit the same feeling. Like I've been also today almost all day in Zoom meetings.
Oh, okay.
And my wife is the only real person I talk to. Only real person I told in real life today. so I'm also struggling.
No, I think the flip side or the positive side is I think COVID has also taught all of us, what to not only find our own ikigais because we've got that much time to introspect and be with ourselves, but also to actually be grateful, for what are the things that really matter in life, and even not take for granted. Meeting friends and so on, we would probably take it for granted, or just sitting across or traveling to another country. Now, just having a roof over your head and if you have food on your table and we are not infected of the virus, then I think that's a lot to be grateful for. So these small things in life, which we always took for granted and never gave enough credit to anyone, to God or to ourselves or whoever else, I think that's what it's teaching us, and that somewhere leads to that happiness, perhaps. Now, but tell me, Hector, are these concepts that that seemingly, it seems very simple, and it seems very commonsensical, but the most simple
Yes.
things are the most difficult to implement in
Yes.
life. So, how, as much as I'd want every part of your book to be like a guide and friend to me, how difficult is it? It is very difficult to implement all of it in total. So, how does one make that balance between what to implement and how does one implement? Is it through practice or through?
Yes, this is also spot on, like very good question. And this is something I share with my co-author Frances, that we like simplicity and clarity, not like complicating things for the sake of I think that's why the book is popular too, because you can read it and there is no complication just for the sake of it. There is clarity. And sometimes when this happens a lot with good books. It's like you're reading this book and it tells you something and it strikes to you, but this is so simple. And many times it's like, I already know this. It's like, Hector is telling me now that you should not eat too much. It's very simple. We already know. But sometimes in life, even myself, in fact, during COVID, I read my book again for the first time because I needed it. Sometimes we need a reminder, like someone and it can be a book or it can be like whatever inspires you. I'm also like not forcing, I shouldn't. I think many people are readers here, but maybe if you don't like reading these days, you have many options. You can be inspired by movies. You can be inspired by music. You can be inspired by conversations like we're having now or podcasts. And these things that will inspire you will be like little and simple things are usually the most important because they are reminders of what we must do. And you were saying like, for example, now I'm reminding myself like the rules that we put in Ikigai, and one of the underlying things that we discover is yes, stress is and this is in all studies all around the world of longevity. There's lots of complicated stuff. If you were like a scientist, engineer, complicated stuff, and people try to find okay, maybe if you do this and that and blah, 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 and you drink like this many teas, you will maybe live more, blah, blah, blah. But when you see all these studies at the end, or somewhere in the word stress is everywhere. So not being stressed is like the underlying common factor. And not being stressed is very subjective, right? Like we all like, this is very easy. Don't be stressed. Like the more you tell me, if you tell this happens with your partner, your wife or your like husband, if you tell don't be stressed, you're like, what? Don't tell me
Causes more stress
because I'm in my right to be stressed because I'm angry because of this. And then like it's like you. So what is and then there are many techniques to deal with stress. There is a whole literature. You can practice mindfulness, you can practice meditation, you can practice, I like a lot, like, okay, stop for a second and think, is this under my control? If it's not under my control, like try to forget about it. Like, don't care, Hector. If it's under my control, then okay, let's find a solution. Is there a solution? Yes, solve it. If there is no solution, just forget about it. So that's my algorithm. It's very like an engineer. So you have all these things that you can start using to deal with the stress. But then when you think about it, it's like one of the number one things is like you just have to smile. And you smile and you will remove stress from yourself and from the people around you. And I'm forgetting all the time about smiling. And every time I remind myself of, I'm in an interview about Ikigai, I remind myself, okay, Héctor, you have to smile and enjoy the interview or whatever you are doing. So it's very simple, but to write these rules of Ikigai, I'm also it took me a long while to distill, like to select this as, okay, these are the really ones that are important and you should focus. So I would say, yes, smile is a very good part and way to start practicing. And another one that is maybe more like, this is like connected with, like more like giving you advice of how do you think about, this is also what you explained at the beginning. One of the number one rules that we give in the book is like, don't think about retiring, but and also don't think about being busy or working all the time, but I like the word active, being active. So don't think about like, okay, when and I'm sure now you are not thinking about retiring. You will probably write books forever, right?
True.
You will stay active forever. So that's another thing, mindset, like, okay, if I stopped working, what would I do with my life? It's a question you can make yourself, and you don't need to stop. Probably most of the people, you have a job, whatever. Imagine it's a mental exercise. Imagine you had like lots of money, lots of, yes. And then imagine you had lots of money. What would you do in the next, usually what happens if you do this mental exercise is like the first 2-3 months, if there is no COVID, you are partying and going to somewhere beautiful and enjoy drinks in the beach. But after 2-3 months, you get bored of this lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
And then what would you really like to do for years in your life if you had like all this is a very good exercise, because then you realize that it's not that complex. It's like probably what appears in your mind is like, if I had like lots of money, what I would like to do is spend my days with my loved ones, have some fun with my friends, but not every day, because if it's every day, it's also getting boring. Like have some fun with my friends and then dedicate more time to this hobby and maybe make it into my profession. And now, yeah, so that's I'm giving everyone some ideas of like
Well, that's
the
very,
rule, which
very,
are
very nice. Yeah.
It's
Simple,
very simple, but you can go very deep into its rule. And
so yeah, before perhaps I open it out for the audience, I just had a last question or two. One was, from what my assessment, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, that when I placed your work, and also, I mean, Ikigai in particular, and your general, the genre of writing that you do, it's almost like a link, so to say, between what is Western existential theories of Albert Camus and Nietzsche or Jean-Paul Sartre and all these people, and even who's Viktor Frankl and so many others. But also very fundamentally, I think it links it to what has been part of life in the East and in the Oriental cultures, Japan, India, and so on. So even in India, if the philosophies of you mentioned Buddha, similarly Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita would say something very similar, but in a different way. Also the Advaita philosophy and so on. So your book kind of brings it, and I think that's one reason why your book resonates that chord in India and in cultures like this, where this has been a part of our lives, but no one has told us so much so as rules, because everything is abstraction in the Oriental cultures.
You are giving me the best answer I've been given. I'm always wondering why is it? Yes, okay. So it brings everything. Yeah, yes, okay,
Okay.
that's a very
So
good. Yeah, it's true. Like I feel like what we wrote, it's like a, I shouldn't say like a remake. It is
it's a
an
bridge. It's a bridge. Yeah.
it's like bringing back to the Viktor Frankl and all the existentialists to the modern world and make
Hmm.
it easier to read. And I think, yes, for some reason, I think because I've been living so long in Asia now, that there is also the mindset of, yes, like I also realized that the Japanese thinking,
Mhm.
it has lots of influence, that if you go back in history, everything comes from India.
Hmm.
It's like the roots of the rules that you're saying, but the rules have become so abstract that it gets confusing.
Hmm.
And yes, so that's the best reason I've been given.
Ah.
But I mean, I'm going to keep asking. Like everyone gives me different answers. Why Ikigai? It's successful. It's very successful all around the world, but especially in India,
Hmm.
Turkey, and Holland.
I see.
And in my own country, it's like not very. It's like in my own country, I'm very criticized. It's like, why
Oh,
is this? Everyone is like, whoa.
I see. That's interesting.
Like I just accept it.
Okay. So the final question before I think open it out to, there are lots and lots of questions that are already coming in the chat room. But so before I hand it over to Apara to moderate the questions, so you also interviewed a lot of these centenarians in Okinawa Island, right? You spoke to them and you said how they welcomed you as a friend whom they'd known, as a brother whom they'd known from beginning. So are there
Yes.
any interesting anecdotes or experiences or persons who stick in your mind just by
Oh,
the very the nature of that interaction with any centenarian, 100 plus person who's probably seen so much of the world, its history, the World War, and all kinds of things? Anything that they said or did which will stay with you all your life?
I think it's the whole thing, but yeah, yes. So we went 2 times to write the book,
Mm-hmm.
and in in December last year. So this is the last time. In fact, I'm going to tell you something that I haven't explained anyone yet. Is the last time I've traveled, because then COVID arrived. So the last time I traveled, we went to Okinawa again
Mm-hmm.
with National Geographic to record a how do you say, a documentary. So we went to the same place, and we had the names from the people. I haven't been there since 2016, and I was wondering, there's like 2 3 people that stayed in my mind because they were the most, I don't know, they were the most welcoming. They were one Yuki-san. He was a driver. She was 87 years old, and she was driving us all around the village all the time.
Wow.
And I was wondering, of course, like when 5 years have passed, if they were still alive or not. I was wondering, like, because some of the people we met, they were 99. I'm like, okay, they are very, and some of them, they were 102, 103, and 5 years later, that's okay, that's 108. And that's like the longest living in the world now is 110 something. So it gets, this is also another thing that we put it very clear in the book. It's like the longest living in the world, but after, this is something I realize, it's a little bit sad. Humans, after we get above 100, is very, even for the people there, is very, you die. It's like, you have to accept it.
Yeah.
So we were wondering, and then it was very beautiful that everyone that I remember, they were all alive, and all of them had the book Ikigai in their homes.
Mm.
They were very proud of that they have now a book about their village. So I
Wow.
think that's a very beautiful, and they were putting it in Japan. You have like you have something like a shrine inside your home where you can pray to they believe in Okinawa, they don't believe in one. This is similar also with India. It's not only one God, but there are many, they call them spirits.
Mm-hmm.
And they had the book Ikigai in this,
Oh,
like
wow. Wow.
like sacred places.
I see.
And one of the guy, we met one new guy now in December that was 107, and he showed us his celebration when he was 100 years old. He was driving a motorbike with a flag, 100 years old.
I see.
And this guy, he remembered what you're saying, the Second World War, and it was still difficult for it brought many memories to him. If you started asking him, he became very emotional, like never, because Okinawa was one of the worst like victims of the Second World War, like even more than people remember the nuclear bombs, but probably Okinawa is the amount is the first people that suffered the attack, the invasion of, and only the people in the north survived. And I think that's one of the reasons that there is some bias in this village. They are in the north, and they survived because they were lucky, basically. So he was looking me with the eyes of like never, because also all the Japanese people there, when they see me, they think I'm American. So he's thinking this guy is asking me questions about the Second World War. He's 107 years old. His mind is not very clear, but when I start asking him about the Second World War, his mind becomes very clear. He becomes young again. And he starts saying things in Japanese about like never, like war is the worst experience in my life, never again. Don't forget about this. He was saying, "You American, don't forget about it. Let's never do this again." So he was like jumping in time. So that is sticking in my mind. Like
wow, how beautiful!
What really is sticking in my mind is the lifestyle of the place. That even like through the book, I don't know if we managed to make it. The lifestyle of the place is really, really relaxed. It's like you are living in the jungle and people are not, it's very difficult to find people watching their smartphones. And you see like very relaxed lifestyle. That's the main thing.
How wonderful. But as time ticks on, I think this is only an opportunity. And I, for one, will surely ask the Prabha Khaitan Foundation to, connect me to you so that we can carry on our conversations, maybe offline.
Yes.
Beyond this.
I want to ask you now more about Indian culture.
Yes, I will probably be of a little help to you there, but I'm sure a lot of people there are waiting to ask you questions, Hector. So I'll, step back, and once again, thank you so much, so very much. It's been such a true pleasure and honor to talk to you, and you've really not only the book, but also this conversation, I'm sure, opened up lots of doors and windows of many minds. So thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask you, so if I have to read one of your books, which one should be the first one I read?
Let it be a gift from my side. I will ensure that through the Prabha Khaitan Foundation, I'll have that sent across to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And so Ms. Apra, over to you.
Yes, thank you so very much. So we have so many questions, but I'd like to request Manisha to unmute Atanu Roy for a question. I can see his hand being raised.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, my question is for Victor. Victor, you said that you are an avid reader. Would you like to mention some book or any book that left an impact on you?
So many. I don't have a favorite. I'm a person that never has favorites, but I have like some authors. I would say that I loved some of the people that shaped my thinking. I love reading science fiction, like imagining a bright future. And I also love reading philosophers, as we were discussing before. Like there is lots of inspiration in Ikigai from philosophers, existentialist philosophers like Viktor Frankl or Camus. So all this, like philosophy is something that interests me a lot, because I'm always wondering about the nature of everything, the nature of reality and the nature of our lives. So any book that is philosophy, I will grab it and read it. But there is
Have you
no,
ever?
I don't have a favorite philosophy yet. That's why I think I want to develop my own philosophy, because I always find that each philosophy has some problems. So I don't know if, and yeah, science fiction, anything that is science fiction, I also love it.
Thank
And
you.
have you ever tried to read?
Thank you, Mr. Roy. We have Priyanka Kuthari with us.
Hello. Hello,
Hello.
Mr. Hector, and hello, Mr. Vikram. It's been a great pleasure to hear both of you. I have a very small question about Moai that you discussed in the book.
Mm-hmm.
How do we inculcate in this world of social distancing and also the social media platforms, which has become the mainstay of interactions and community, community interactions?
Very good question. So, but I think, so Moai, for anyone who has not, is a Japanese word. Well, it's an Okinawan word that they make a small, it's like making a group of friends that you support each other no matter what, and you meet each other. For example, it's very important to put a date, like, so everyone feels like every 15 days you have to meet and talk. And usually you do it in the real world, it's much better. You meet with your moai and you have a cup of tea or whatever you love to do. And after conversation, you can play cards, or in Ogimi, we saw people like singing karaoke or playing whatever you want to do in that moai. And now you can, I think we are having now, it's my first time with the Prava Foundation, but we are having kind of a moai here. We are having, the only thing that is this kind of events is like one time. But if, for example, we repeated this every 15 days, it will become like it will become more personal. And maybe you're thinking now social networks are becoming very impersonal, but like you have like how everyone has, I don't know, thousands of followers and like thousands of friends that are not really friends. But those, many times I think those are real people. And I also struggle, like I always think like but I have my own group of my friends that we act like a moai. And you can start using the word, like you can create your own moai. And usually if you have a common interest, it's like, okay, I like literature. You put together 10 people who love literature and you create these days. I think for that, social networks are very good. You can create a group on your WhatsApp or on Facebook and have your moai. And like every 15 days we meet over Zoom and we will discuss about this book that we have read together. So it's just having the will to do it. You can do it online too, and then hopefully we can do it offline too. But the mindset is to not like have like, the internet is pushing us to have like 10,000 friends, but no one is really a friend. You can pick up and make your own group and become intimate with them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we have few questions in the chat box. Shifali is asking Mr. Hector, how and when can one find his or her Ikigai?
When I would say if you haven't found your Ikigai is to find your Ikigai. So you always, there is not a when or where. You have to be always in the search, because when you are, this also depends on your beliefs, but if you're not, the worst that you can do is to sit in your sofa and and wait for your Ikigai to come to you. It will probably not come. So it's nice to be. I also like my sofa and I use it every day, but I'm not like all the time there watching Netflix. I love Netflix too. I watch it in but that's what I mean. You have to keep moving, to keep like searching. If you stay, the worst that you can do is to stagnate in one position.
Wonderful. One question I'd also like to ask, can you throw more light on Wabi Sabi, which you have
Yes.
mentioned in the book?
So Wabi Sabi, it's yet another Japanese word, which it's very difficult to translate, and it roughly means like the beauty of imperfection, and also how imperfection can be like everything. The real meaning of it is like everything in life is imperfect. So even the word perfection it becomes meaningless if you think about it very deeply, except in the world of mathematics. So if you get out of mathematics, there is nothing perfect in our lives or anything. So Wabi Sabi is a word to accept that. That's because many times when we compare ourselves to other people, we feel imperfect and insufficient these days. We can also blame social networks. You can always find someone more beautiful than you on a social network. You can find someone with more followers than you. You can find someone who has more money more money than you. So you everywhere you look on the internet, you will feel like, oh, there's all these perfect people, and I'm imperfect. So that's the wrong mindset, I think, because these people who look perfect on the internet, they are also imperfect like you. We are all together in this Wabi Sabi, like thinking about Wabi Sabi for yourself. And the Japanese used this word originally for art. The Japanese believe like if you buy a broken cup that has been restored in Japan, it's usually more expensive than a new cup. This is called kintsugi, and it's like a Japanese art that you put gold into the cracks, and then the cup becomes more beautiful. It's imperfect, but more beautiful. So I like applying this to me, to myself, like your imperfections can become your superpowers. Like you can become like something beautiful. For example, I had this belief. Some people don't believe me, but I launched my book Ikigai in 2015, and I never presented my book until last year in October, and I was very afraid of public speaking, and I didn't believe I was good at writing books, but I felt very insufficient and I was imperfect. Like, okay, if I do public speaking, I will not be good. And now you can also notice I've been practicing for several months and I'm still not very good, but I think I have developed my own Héctor style, I would say. From Vikram's questions, you also notice like, oh, Héctor likes talking, and Vikram asks something and I start talking about something a little bit different. That's my personality. So I'm trying not to correct it, but to bring my imperfection in public speaking, to make it my authentic thing. This is who I am. So this might resonate to many of you, that you're thinking, oh, this is my imperfection. I'm never good at this. I'm never good at, but maybe that's what makes you unique. So it might be precious.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much. On this note, I'd like to extend our deepest gratitude to Mr. Héctor García and Dr. Vikram Sampath. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing valuable information on our biggest teacher, our lives. I'm sure we all go back from here as more enlightened and inspired. And as you said, to activate your Ikigai, you need to meet the right person. We keep our fingers crossed that we shall meet the right person very, very soon. And Mr. Héctor García, we have also noted the algorithm of life, which you shared with us. On this note, I'd also like to share that today we are joined by the audience from about 30 cities across India. Thank you so very much once again, Mr. Héctor García, Dr. Vikram Sampath, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. See you, Hector.